everyone, welcome to part 2 of this tutorial series on how to create this red robin hedge. In part 1 we hand painted our leaf and branch components in Photoshop, and now in part 2 we're going to model our hedge using Blender's geometry nodes. Geometry nodes will enable us to create one model that can then be used to create hedges of various shapes and sizes whenever we like. So I've started up a new blend file. And before we do anything else, let's just go and save it into our project. I've got my project folder right here. So just going to call this red robin hedge.blend. And then let's just organise ourselves a little bit here. We'll do a new collection, which we will put our camera and light in, and then turn that off. We don't need them at the moment. Let's just call that cam and light. And then our default cube we're actually going to use, and we will call this hedge. And then we're going to need another collection which we will call planes. So let's start by turning this cube into a more hedge-like shape. Select it and press N. Now I've determined that we're going to make a hedge of 1.7 metre in height, 3 metre in length and 0.5 metre depth. So if we go to our dimensions down here for the object, if we go to front view, so along the x-axis is going to be our length. So x needs to be 3 metres. Z is our height, which is going to be 1.7. And then the y is going to be 0.5. And then let's just Control A and apply our rotation scale. Then I'm going to go into edit mode. We're going to remove the bottom face, so X, and delete the faces. And then we'll just Control R, and we're going to put in one edge loop roughly about 1/3 of the way up. Doesn't matter the exact location, just roughly there. Next we need to create 4 planes for our 4 branches. So let's go up to Add, Mesh, and get a plane. Move it on X over here. And also go into side view and let's rotate it on 90. Just gonna quickly turn on face orientation so we can tell which way our face is turning. If it's grey, they're facing us. If it's red, they're facing the wrong way. So let's actually just rotate that on X by 180 degrees. It's now facing the right way. We'll go into edit mode and we want to do one subdivide. Now back into object mode, and we're going to duplicate this 3 more times. Shift D on X, Shift D on X, and Shift D on X. Okay, let's select all of them, go back into edit mode, and we're just going to, in vertex mode, just select the middle vertex and just adjust them slightly, just give them a little bit of randomness. So I'm going to grab that one on Y, grab it on Y and bring it out a little bit. Let's do the opposite with this one, move it that way. And same with the bottom ones as well, just give them a little bit of randomness. Right, in object mode, we're going to Control A and just reset the rotation and scale. Just make sure that rotation's at 0 and scale is at 1 on all of them. Okay, we're all good there. And then let's go over, we'll select our hedge base, and then we're going to go over to Geometry Nodes workspace. I'm going to minimize this spreadsheet tab. And then we're going to add a new Geometry Nodes modifier to our hedge base. We'll call it Hedge. And here we have our input, which is the hedge, and our output, which is what we're going to get once we've modified it. Okay, that is not how we spell hedge. Right, so first node that we're going to need is a distribute points on faces. What that's going to do is it's just going to give us a bunch of points all around the hedge here that we can then attach our planes to. So let's Shift A, distribute points on faces, which we'll put here. We're going to need a join geometry. Same thing again, join geometry. We'll plug this in here, plug that into there, and then we'll plug our group input into here as well. So as you can see, we've now got a bunch of points on our faces. We can change this one to Poisson disk, which will give us some finer control over our points. I would suggest setting a distance minimum of at least 0.1, just so that we haven't got loads of planes on top of each other. You can see if you put that up, they get further and further apart. I think 0.1 should be good for now. And we'll just leave everything else as it is. Next, we need an instance on points node. Slip that in there. And here is where we can plug in our planes. So from the instance input, just bring it down, and we need a collection info. There we go. And in the collection box, click on our planes collection. So that is going to bring in all the planes that are in this collection here. So they're not currently on our hedge, which is fine. We need to separate the children, reset the children. There you go, we're getting something now, and if we hit relative as well. So let's just, I'm going to turn on face orientation so we can see which ones are facing which way. So red is the back of the plane, and the grey ones are the ones that are facing the correct way. So as we can see at the moment, the ones on every one of these planes is all facing the front. They're all facing one way, and what we need them to do is to follow the hedge and face the direction of the normals of the base. We're also going to select pick instance. Let's put these 3 nodes in a frame and start keeping things organised. So join in new frame and then rename the frame. I'm going to call this one Instance Planes on Hedge. So we can see at a glance what each section does. Okay, so now let's work on getting these planes all rotated in the right direction. So for that, we're going to need a capture attribute node. So let's go Shift A, capture attribute. Put it about over here. Move the group input and plug this into here. What this capture attribute node is going to do, it's going to take our hedge base mesh and it's going to tell us which way the normals are facing. So then we can then pass that information on to this and it can use it to rotate it properly. So we want to change this one to face because we want to get the face normals. And from here we want to get a normal node. Okay, Shift A, normal, to tell it that we want the normal information. Into there, we're going to plug this one into this mesh one here. And then we're going to plug the normal information into a align rotation to vector node. Put that there, and then we're going to plug this into the vector. And the output go into the rotation of the instance on points. Just move this around a little bit so we can see what's going on. Right, so as you can see, that did something, but it's not exactly right. So with the align rotation to vector, basically we need to find which way is right. So I've got a feeling it's going to be Y auto. Okay, that does look correct. Only that our plane normals are facing the wrong way now though. So let's just go and select all of these. Go into edit mode. And Alt N and just flip them all, and then yeah, that looks okay. Back to the hedge, and I'm just going to turn the scale down on these planes as they're all a bit gigantic. So as you can see now, we've got planes facing upwards, planes facing that way, and from the sides as they're supposed to be. So this is much better, but what I would like to do is to add some random rotation to these planes as well, as they're all rotated extremely uniformly right now and it all looks far too neat. So let's get a frame around these. And we will call it rotate planes. and then we're going to need a rotate rotation node. So rotate rotation. We're going to put it after the align rotation to vector node, because this will be performed after they've all been turned the correct way in the beginning. Out of the rotate by input, we're going to add a random value. Put that in there. And as you can see, the maximum value is already set to 1 on every axis. So that is the result that it gives us automatically. We can have a look at bringing all these down a little bit. It depends how messy you want your hedge, really. So that's 0 rotation, that's where we came from. And if we just turn it up, and go past 1 as well, and we'll just keep rotating. So I think we'll stick with 1 for now. But you can always come back in whenever you like and adjust it. Now, if we go and have a look at the hedge in wireframe mode, let's face the front, let's just select our hedge. Now, you'll see that there is the actual bottom of our hedge there. Let's bring the whole object up to the red line here so that we can see everything better. That's the base of the hedge. Now, the problem that we're going to have here is that all of these planes, they're all below the ground level. So that's where it's going to sit on the ground, and these are all below, and it's going to look a bit rubbish because it's just going to look like a load of leaves are getting cut off in a perfect horizontal line, which we don't want. But that is the reason that I had us put a loop cut into here earlier, so that we can deal with that. So temporarily, just so we can see what's happening here, we're going to bypass this instance on points node, and we're just going to plug in the distribute points on faces so that we can just see our points instead of the planes. Plug that in there, and then just get rid of that one. And now we can see all of our points. They're all over this section and they're all over this section. And what we want to do is we want to get rid of them from this bottom section here so that they aren't so low down. To do that, we're going to need a delete geometry node. Let's pull this a little bit further out. We're going to plug the delete geometry into the capture attribute and then replug the group input into the delete geometry. I'm going to change it to faces because we want to delete faces. And then out of the selection, we will get a compare node, and we'll choose the less than. We'll change it to float. And then out of the first input, we need to get a separate X, Y, Z, because we only want this deletion to affect the Z axis. And then out of the vector, we need a position node. Right, as you can see, we just had a lot of points disappear from here, which is exactly what we want, really. You can see what it's doing by using this slider. The higher the number, the more is going to disappear. The lower the number, the more points we'll have further down. So I think what it was on at default is exactly what we want, 0. Let's now reattach our instance on points. And we can cut through here to get rid of this one. And that is looking pretty good. One thing we can do is to go into edit mode and just select our edge loop, and then we can just adjust it manually to then just refine it a little bit further. The further you bring it down, the further down the planes are going to come. Yeah, so I think something like that looks great. Let's just frame up our deletion nodes. And we'll call this delete bottom row of faces. Nope. Rename. Nope. Bottom row of faces. Okay, only things left to do now. If we go back to here, I want to put a shade smooth node on the end. Set shade smooth rather. Right there, which will make our planes nice and smooth. And then on the very end we just need a realize instances node so that we can export it properly. I'm going to come up here and just turn off the face orientation. We don't need that anymore. And then I think we'll just have a little play with the rotation and the number of planes as well. So just adjust it however you like really. You can try the min, which I think I'm just going to keep that at 0, and then the max might bring that down a little bit still. You can hold in shift as you're adjusting it as well for more control. And just try and get something that you like. I think something like that for the rotation. That is a hedge that definitely needs cutting though. And then we can just have a play around over here with the distance minimum. So the higher you put that up, the further away the planes are going to get from each other. So unless you're really worried about how much geometry you've got, just keep it fairly low but not 0. You don't actually want them on top of each other. You can bring the density max down. Yeah, I think we'll leave that at default for now actually. Oh yeah, about 10. You can mess around with the seed, see if it can give you a better result. Oh, I quite like that one. Although we are missing planes from the bottom here, so we might still have to go in and just bring this down a little bit. Maybe like that. That's it. And just play with the seed until you're happy that it's covering everything that you want it to cover. I'm happy with that for now. Next we need to create 2 different materials, one for the base of the hedge and one for the planes. As they'll be using different textures, it'll just make things easier to have 2 different materials. So let's go across to our material panel. We've got our hedge selected. Let's do a new material. We'll call it hedge base. In geometry nodes, let's get a set material node. And we'll pop it on our first one here. Go and select Hedge base. And then I just want to go into the shading panel, and we're just going to add an image texture to this before we copy the material. Image texture, I'm going to create a new one, we'll call it color grid. And generated type, select color grid. New image. As you can see, we've got a bit of colour under there now. Which means that our image has been applied, but we've got no UVs yet. If we add a new material slot, and then select Hedge base again, this time we'll create a new user and we'll change the name of this to Hedge Planes. And then back in geometry nodes, right before our join geometry, we'll add another set material. And we'll add our hedge planes. There we go. Right, time to set up the UVs. And what we're going to do is temporarily disconnect these instances so that we can see what we've got going on here. We'll go over to our UV editing panel and we're going to mark some seams. It will have one whole face here, and then we'll also separate this top face as well. Control E, mark seam, and then we'll select all and unwrap. Okay, so everything's on its side at the moment, so let's just go and deal with that. This one here needs rotating by 90 degrees. This one here looks like -90. And this one on the top, just rotate by -90. That will be fine. And we have our snapping on at the top, and it's set to vertex, so I'm just going to snap these lot together. Like that. Select everything, and then I'm going to drag them right down to the very bottom corner. We'll zoom in and just get it right to that bottom there, so everything lines up properly. Going to set our pivot point to the 2D cursor, which is right there, and then we're going to scale these up. Not quite to the top, just a little bit off the top like that. Because this tiling texture that we're going to create in Substance Designer is going to tile from left to right, but it won't tile from top to bottom. So that is all good there. Okay, now onto the planes. Shouldn't need to do much with these. Just select them all. You and you. Then we'll just go and apply our hedge planes material. I think you have to do it individually for each one. Okay. And just need to turn these round the right way. I mean, we're rotating our planes all over the place anyway, so it probably won't make much difference, but it's probably good if they all start off in the same direction. Then we can actually control them then. Okay, so this one. Right, first let's turn snapping off and then change our pivot point back to bounding box center. And then we can rotate this by 90. And then these other three are all just upside down. So select all those together. We need to rotate these by their individual origins. So yep, just rotate 180 and then they're all up the right way. That's everything unwrapped. Now we just need to export. So select our hedge again. We need to go back to geometry nodes and just reconnect our instances. Like so. All looks good. It's a bit crazy. And then if you don't have the FBX exporter switched on, you need to go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and just make sure this is switched on here. So we'll go File, Export, FBX. Here's one I made earlier, but you won't have this yet, so just type in Red Robin Hedge or whatever you want to call it. You need to have selected objects ticked, and it should be on by default, but just in case it's not, you also need to have under geometry, mouse is playing up again, apply modifiers, just make sure that's on, but it should be anyway. And then just export FBX. Okay, so next we'll import our mesh into Substance Designer and begin making our textures.